Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at race number 8 at Saratoga on Sunday. Let's throw up the field for the Mahony Stakes. 5.5 furlongs on the turf. We're hoping it stays on the grass. The weather's been rather horrid up in New York, and perhaps this turf course will be on the soft side. Big field if it stays on in a pretty good betting race. How well did the 7 run last time out? Mansa Musa. Bill Mott really had him ready to go. Unfortunately, he faced a super filly and Star of Mystery.
Just came up a little bit short, length and a half feet in there, but a huge figure came back, 100 buyer speed figure for that 3-year-old colt. And I thought all in all, a really good betting race. Like you said, hopefully we stay on the turf. I think if there's moisture on the turf and they still stay on, that's going to make for an interesting thing for these horses, as a lot of them haven't really been over anything other than a firm turf course in their turf events. But all in all, a lot of horses come in here off of very nice wins last time out.
Some quick horses in here as we take a peek at our Timeform US pace projector. The pace could be contested. The 2 Howard Wallowitz blasted off to win on a synthetic surface last time out at Gulfstream. This will be the turf debut, but he looks pretty quick, as does the 4 Apollo 10, who to me is probably a little bit more of a versatile type. I really think the key to this pace is the 5 No Name Mets. I know they're taking the blinkers off, but he has been very fast out of the gate in several of his starts, including his most recent race.
And even looking at his Keeneland races in the Palisades, he didn't have blinkers on and he was still quick out of the gate. So it just makes you wonder if last time out they weren't happy with the blinkers. He's wore them in those last 2 races. They've both been disappointing for finishes, but let's not forget at Jaipur, he faced older horses there in that grade 1 event. So I think he could take a step up here with the equipment change. And I agree with this pace projection. I mean, the 2 Howard Wallowitz, he showed a ton of early foot and he was uncontested and draws more towards the inside. So I figure he'll have to go regardless of the surface switch.
And if the pace heats up, you want to consider the 9 Reef Runner, an in-form closer with a pretty strong kick. He's got the fastest Timeform US late pace rating. Let's start things off with another runner that could benefit if the pace is hot. That's the number 1 Fandom, who comes out of the Mansa Musa race. We're going to take a look at that performance. That was the grade 3 quick call. Mansa Musa is on the outside, getting ready to attack pace-setting No Name Mets, who will end up tiring. Fandom, who settled back near the rear of the field, gets to the outside and runs on late. Mansa Musa briefly made the lead, and then the impressive winner runs by. Good performance for the runner-up. Solid enough performance for Fandom, who might improve getting the blinkers back on.
Yeah, and he was still well behind Mansa Musa in here, but I think for him, it was his first start since Keeneland back on April 7th. So, I think he could take another step forward here, second time out. He's going to get blinkers on. Now, he wore blinkers in his debut, and while he was able to clear that field and open up on them 5.5 on the turf course back at Keeneland as a 2-year-old, I think other horses are still faster than him. So I wonder if it's just something not necessarily to have him on the lead, but just to have him closer to the pace so he's more in that striking distance.
This will be the turf debut for the 2 Howard Wallowitz. This is a Munnings colt coming off of a nice victory against maiden competition in this race at Gulfstream Park on the Tapeta surface. Went to the front and cleared off entering the turn and keeps on going. Just kicks away from this group in the final 16th of a mile, winning by 8. Very strong 92 buyer speed figure. There's something here with this guy. I wonder if this might be a little bit too much too soon, facing better horses, shipping up from South Florida, and a little bit of a surface switch as well.
Yeah, you stole my thought process here. I mean, obviously it was an eye-catching performance. He wins very easy, gets a big figure, but now has to translate that to the turf, which necessarily shouldn't be a problem, but it's just that he's facing a more experienced group. And it's tough to say what he really faced down in South Florida. Only 2 horses that finished behind him. They've both run back. One won a maiden claiming event, and the other one was second in a special weight. But we know in terms of quality of racing, Gulfstream Park, if that was a race, say, a couple of months before this, we'd maybe be talking a different story, just knowing that the caliber is a little bit better during those winter months. But I still can't knock the way that he won and the way that he did it. He did get an equipment change. He wore blinkers for the first time. And he obviously might have not liked the dirt in his debut for connections that now they strike at a high percentage.
The number 3 is Yellow Cart. He really took to the turf last time out, by far a career best performance, earning a 90 buyer speed figure, winning a first level allowance. And there were some older horses in that race as well. This horse still seems a little bit green. He didn't break very well. He sort of shied away as they entered the turn, but he got a really nice split. The trip did work out, the race flow worked out, but he was running on at the end. And if this pace is contested, maybe he'll kick once more. Arad Ortiz picks up the mount.
Maybe by not getting the trip that one would have thought last time out, he learned something. We know that he can rate, where there's a couple of others in here. I feel like they're a little bit more one-dimensional, whether they want to close from off of it or they want to be forward. I think his versatility came in handy. He probably takes a step forward and maybe loses a little bit of that greenness. Maybe he comes around here with that race under his belt, but you said it as best as well. He took a huge step up getting onto the turf. I think you can draw a line through his dirt race. It wasn't necessarily horrible. He was well beaten in there, but Raging Torrent was much the best in that field, and it was going 7 ace. So he seems like a horse that really likes to sprint, whether it's on the turf or if it's on the Tapeta, as we saw at Turfway Park.
Let's take a peek at the 4 Apollo 10's most recent run. Stakes action, sprinting on the turf at Monmouth Park. Well, it's only a 5-horse field. This guy was involved from the start, and he battled with the eventual third-place finisher, puts that horse away, and then finds a little bit more to win. This was a determined performance for Apollo 10, a horse that has shown the versatility to sit off the pace if need be, and I think that sort of trip could work out very well for him on Sunday.
It was nice that he had pressure. He kind of got hounded all throughout the race. The question I have for him, this will be the class test for him. Is he this level? I do think he's facing better horses than he has in most of his starts at this point. You can see when he was in the Atlantic Beach last year in the fall, he went off favorite. He failed as the favorite. Works for Me finished in front of him in that race. Is actually 2 1/4 lengths clear of him. But so far, what we've seen as a 3-year-old, I do think he's taken the right steps forward. And now this is a logical spot to see if he's a little bit better than he was last year.
No Name Metz is the number 5. Trainer George Weber's going to tinker with the equipment again, this time taking the blinkers off. A very precocious and fleet 2-year-old, multiple stakes winner. He was 4th as the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint last year. I just wonder if maybe this crop of horses is sort of caught up with him from a maturity standpoint, because his recent efforts, I understand the Jaipur was way too tough for him, but I was a little disappointed in the William Walker. Maybe he wasn't as forwardly placed as he should have been. And certainly in the quick call last time out, he went fast on the lead, but had no response when they came for him.
And maybe looking at those last 2 with the blinkers on, obviously I'm going to draw a line through the Jaipur. I just really overmatched in that spot, and he went off at a huge price, unlike we've seen his other starts. He didn't even break well in that race. And I think looking at him last time out, he was really geared up with the blinkers. He was clear of the field early and tired. And you mentioned it, the fractions were really, really quick early on. So I don't know what to do with him. I think if you like him, maybe you're using him underneath. But I also wonder the same thing. Was he just better as a 2-year-old and a little bit earlier this season? Has he cooled off? It's sometimes tough to keep these horses kind of firing every single race, especially I feel like with turf sprinters, it can be really tough. And I'm just really curious to see what the tactics will be now. Where will he be early?
Steve Asmussen trains the 6 American Rascal. This is a Stone Street homebred. Switched back to the turf last time out in the quick call, and he was sort of settled near the back of the pack with his Stone Street buddy Fandom, and came with a decent enough late run to finish 4th. He doesn't have a lot of speed, so he's going to need a quick pace and a good trip to set things up for him. I still think there might be a little bit of upside potential, and his last race was coming off somewhat of a layoff, so perhaps there's a forward move in him at a decent price.
Second start off the layoff, I would expect him to take a step forward. I think he's going to need the pace help, as we've seen in all of his races, right? He's either stalking on the dirt or he's a little bit further back in that turf race. I like that, Joel's been aboard for some of his good performances on the dirt. Maybe the instructions were to see if they could close into that quick pace last time out, if they thought that was the way that was going to pan out. He's tough for me, especially at 8-1 on the morning line. I felt like there were other horses in here, Dan, at bigger prices that I could make a stronger case for.
Mansa Musa, I think, is the horse to beat, the number 7. Just in raging form right now for Bill Mott. Looked good beating a field that included some older horses. 2 starts back right here over course and distance at Saratoga. You saw the quick call. The race speaks for itself. It was a legitimately good performance with a legitimately fast figure. And it's not like he's some speedball that's going to get cooked up on the pace. He can work out his own trip.
Yeah, and that's really what he showed last time out, that he could be closer to those quick fractions, and just simply was second best, tracked in second throughout. But prior to that, was further off of it. Also, the pace has been hot in all of those races, so not worried about where he'll be. And I think the big thing with him, as you look at some of his races, especially when he was in Ireland and overseas, if there's a little give to the ground, he should be just fine.
New York bred number 8 Works for Me, back in against Open Company. Wonder if this class level is a little bit too tough, although he did run well in the Open Atlantic Beach, sprinting on the turf last year in New York. This is the kind of horse, though, rain or shine, he's likely going to show up with a good effort, and he did earn a quick number on dirt last time out. A little bit of an outsider, though, considering the quality of horses he's going to be facing if this race stays on the lawn.
And he likes to be forward. I don't think he's necessarily the fastest horse on paper. So we're going to have to see if he's a stalking type where he's just going to sit right off the pace and if he can pass horses. He's been able to do that on the dirt. We've seen that a couple of times where he's been okay, at least rating for maybe the opening quarter or maybe the opening, I don't know, 3/8 of a race. And then he's made the move. But we'll see what he does. I think when you look at his most recent race, he won very nicely, but it was a race carded for the turf. It was washed off, and he had to face whoever else decided to stick in that spot. So another one, he's like, there's a couple in here. The other thing to note, he's looking for that first turf win.
The number 9 Reef Runner looks like one of the strongest, if not the outright strongest closer in the field. All of his turf sprints are good, including this eye-catching performance against allowance foes at Gulfstream. It's tough to rally going 5/8 on the lawn at Gulfstream when you're about 5 lengths down with 3/16 of a mile to go. But this guy really kicks it into gear and runs this horse down on the front. This is a nice kick.
This is really nice, and I feel like he's getting better with each of his strides, and he just is able to get to the horse on front, being urban legend. And his turf races, we can't forget, even in the Roar, he was second behind Crimson Advocate, who was highly regarded last year as a 2-year-old and things of that nature. So he's got that wicked turn of foot. I think that'll help him in this spot. This will be a class test for him, even though he's faced some of those stakes races down at Gulfstream Park on the Pieta and the turf. But I also think there's something to note here. David Fox, I think he shifts with intent. He doesn't really tend to leave Florida that often. So they're obviously looking for a spot to get another stakes race under his belt and maybe to test his class. And great way to do so at Saratoga.
The final horse entered in the body of the race is the 10. That's Run Carson. Stepping up in class, I think they really found a sweet spot for him last time at Colonial. First level allowance race, maybe not the toughest field. They experimented with the blinkers. He seemed to like it. This is a much tougher spot, and the post position is no bargain either. Breaking from post 10, he's got to work something out, and being tactical, it's not like he can drop back and make one run, which would be tough enough. He might be forced wide going into the turn.
He potentially could be. They're probably hoping that there's enough of horses in the field to his inside that aren't quick enough, and that he can tuck in and save some ground entering the turn. I think at least we've seen from him that, at least on debut at Gulfstream Park, he was able to sit off of it and work out a trip and had enough left in the tank to kind of get by everyone. I thought that was a great performance. And now to see him where the fractions haven't been as quick, because it's been 5.5 versus 5, he's raced both of those times at Colonial and Churchill, very, very strong, even when, he had to face Bear River twice and kind of get the best of that runner. I think there's some upside here, and I kind of sold it about the morning line and what price. I mean, if he's anywhere near 15-1, at least in the exotics, I think he can work out a trip to kind of get in the money.
The 11 Beret is entered main track only for Wesley Ward. Just a logical contender if this race is washed off, following a 90 Beyer speed figure and an off-turf win earlier at Churchill Downs back in May. Let's take a look at our top picks. Again, it's a race where I think you can make a case for several horses. You're going Mansa Musa, very dangerous contender. I would have to use him in anything. I like that you got the 10 in there as well, because that horse is going to offer a lot of value.
I'm looking for that. I'm going to need it. I think Mansa Musa is going to be a very short price in here, even at 5-2 on the morning line, just because of his last two. And the versatility that he has, he draws better than horses maybe necessarily on the inside or on the outside here if they don't show speed. So he's simply the one to beat. I went for a price here. I was actually torn between the 10 and your top pick, your yellow card, because I felt like both of them, they won nicely last time out, and there's some upside to them and certainly more value.
You mentioned the key word for me, and that's upside with the 3 yellow card. He's still a little bit immature watching him run. I think there's something there. There's some kind of potential, but I'll need a price. He's 6-1, and I wouldn't take a dime less than that in such a competitive field. 7-10-3-1 for Ashley, 3-7-1-5 for me. It's the Mahony, hopefully on turf at Saratoga on Sunday. Best of luck.